Hi everyone, Mike McConville here again for StringTech Workstations, Stratford, Ontario, Canada. Before I go any further with this Dreadnought guitar for Graham, there's a few things I want to point out that I mentioned in previous videos. Now that the shaping, sculpting, and most of the final sanding, a little tiny bit of final sanding left to do on this top. But that's more or less what we've got. Now, even around the bridge plate here, you can see there's a little bit of squeeze out. That's okay. Along this brace here, that's all acceptable. Even the X brace there, little tiny bit of squeeze out. You can sort of expect that when you're using high glue. If you look at any of the instruments, Gibson guitars from the 20s right up through the mid-40s, you'll always see a little bit of squeeze out. It just tells you that you've got plenty of glue in there. Okay, now the other thing I did point out in the previous video, this bridge plate does not touch the X brace. There's a little bit of a space there. This is quite a bit smaller than your conventional bridge plate. This is what they used in the mid-40s. This is what was on that 1921 Nick Lucas. Very small footprint. So the function of the bridge plate, in this case it's rosewood, is essentially giving you a nice hard resilient surface for the ball end of the string to pull up against on the inside without bruising the wood at the top. So that's it, our scalloped X brace. We've got that big, high head brace, tall, narrow head brace, and then the graph on the other side. So that kind of wraps it up for the top. I want to talk about the back a little bit too before I glue this up. So this is the final profile for my back braces. So you can see, once again, we're taking a page from the vintage Gibson book. Very tall and narrow. So you retain the tensile strength, but you drastically reduce the mass or the weight. And the idea behind this is to increase the acoustic response or sensitivity without compromising the structural integrity. That's it for the back. So we've had another shift in humidity. Things have dried up pretty good. So I want to get this back glued on over the weekend. So it looks like we've got another dry day tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be able to get that top glued on as well. And then the body will be done. Anyway, so as you can see, this is my table here. Now on the underside, you see a smaller disc on the underside of that table. And that just drops on the tack deck like that and then pushes up against the rails. That gives me a positive stop. And of course the proverbial hockey pucks are there to kind of hold the thing in place as I carve. So for anyone that is a woodworker or wood carver, I'm the son of a cabinet maker, wood carver, you learn pretty quickly that oftentimes when you're carving, you need to change direction when you're paring down these braces. Once they're pared down and I kind of get the basic shape I'm after, then I have my sanding sticks that I make up. You've seen these in numerous videos now with tongue depressors, two-sided tape. And then we sand out any marks left by the carving. And that gives us a nice, narrow, tall profile. That's what we're after here. So we're reducing the weight of the back without decreasing its tensile strength. So this is another page out of the vintage Gibson, the golden era Gibsons, right back to the 20s, early 20s, right up through the mid-40s. The braces tended to be tall and thin. So ultimately you're walking that razor's edge between the structural integrity and the acoustic sensitivity. I'll give you a few more shots on this as we go. I really got to get moving on this. I want to get that glued on today. Cheers. Now, if you remember, in that first video when we talked about the bracing for the Dreadnought top, I specifically pointed out that this brace is actually jointed. So from here to here, it's dead flat. And this graph, of course, it's not radiused. It just flexes to meet this flatness across the sound hole. Here is why we do that. I talked about the radiused sanders that I made. You can see them leaning up. There's one over there, a 30-foot one, and there's one over there, a 24-foot one. Those sanders sand a spherical radius into the rim, the tail block, and the head block. Now I just have a jointed flat piece of pine here with 80 grit sandpaper on, and I am actually going to take the radius out of the leading edge of that block. Now I have an extension on that block. This is the thickness of the actual block. I put this sort of extension on there. I'll explain that a little bit more later as we get on with the build. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to flatten this out with this sanding block and take the radius out. Now the reason I'm taking that radius out, when the neck goes on the body and the fingerboard extension goes over to the sound hole, that we don't have that radius to contend with. So this will give us a nice, flat, perfect neck to body angle for the neck and fingerboard.